Unibet. Episode 81. David Carle, Head Coach, University of Denver Pioneers.
People ask me about my age a lot, and for some reason think maybe I connect better than older people or what have you. And I just think ultimately people who are good at what they do are good at what they do. And to be a good coach, you have to be able to connect with people and relay your message and trust people and build relationships. And I think you can be 32 and do that. I think you can be 52 and do that. I think you can be 72 and do that.
Die Tribüne erhebt sich und der Hexenkessel kocht. Da bleibt kein Moment, um einmal durchzuatmen. Bring it on. Mit dem Vortender abgefälscht und die Scheibe im Tor. Aus dem Nichts. Wie schön war das gemacht.
Unibet Hockey O'Clock. It's become a nice little tradition here on the Unibet Hockey O'Clock podcast to have the NCAA winning or championship winning head coach on the program. Last year, it was Greg Carvel from UMass. This year, it is the head coach who tied the University of Michigan for the most wins in NCAA history. It's none other than David Carle. And so thankful, Coach Carle, that you're taking the time to now grace the podcast and talk a little bit about NCAA hockey.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. And hopefully our good alum, Emil Romig, tunes into your podcast back there in Austria.
You know, as he's just been on a championship-winning team in Denmark, where he finished the season, started in Austria, I'll try to let him know that you had a shout on the podcast to him, and I'll send the program forward to him, as he's been doing really well, and obviously a lot of NCAA players now in Austria, a lot of other leagues, Emilio Romig being one of them, and another great University of Denver alum just graced the program a couple of weeks ago with Adrian Biederman. So the Pioneers obviously go around pretty well. But this podcast obviously is about you, the university, the big success that you had basically 2 months ago at the beginning of April with a record, or tied the record for NCAA championship winning seasons campaigns with 9 with the University of Michigan. Going back to April, going back to obviously the confetti coming down on the ice in Boston at the Frozen Four, and obviously your inboxes of all sorts, social media, text messages, email exploding. Is there one text message, one congratulatory email that stood out?
Yeah, there was, again, when you go on a run like we did, there's a lot of people that reach out, and I would say that winning is really hard, and a lot of these people, play a huge factor in us, whether it's alumni, faculty members on campus. We're at a university, you're kind of governed by a board of trustees, which is almost like a board of governors, or a board like that you would have at a publicly traded company. And so many of these people are very in tune, very supportive, watching the run, and former players and all of it. So it was really overwhelming. Took, probably 3-4 days to really get back to everybody. And but I would say, I don't know, maybe the most unique or coolest one would be the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche, Joe Sakic, reached out during the run just to simply, say congratulations, and really enjoys watching our team. And obviously they're going to the Cup finals and have had a very impressive run. I think they're 12-2, 2 sweeps, and going to 6 games with St. Louis, having just beat the Oilers last night. So that was pretty cool. And I'm born in '89, so when the Avs were, going on their runs with Joe as the captain in '96 and '01, those were, I definitely was watching all of that as a young boy in Anchorage, Alaska. So that was a pretty cool one. That was special. Someone reaching out that was unexpected, but very cool.
Talk about it pretty casually, but Imagine the Hockey Hall of Famer and GM of one of the premier franchises in all of hockey sending you a text message because you just won a championship. Sounds pretty special. Coach, I want to back this up a little bit for Austrian and maybe European listeners, and there are a whole lot of it on this program. NCAA hockey and its popularity have been growing in Europe as well. Also because of the influx of talent that we've seen with NCAA backgrounds. The University of Denver, again, one of the premier programs in NCAA hockey. But if one had never heard of the Pioneers, how would you describe the program and its rich history to a European hockey fan who might want to get into NCAA hockey?
Yeah, well, I know that, many of the European teams are in smaller communities. They're very supported by the community, very raucous, lively atmospheres, and really takes on, almost like a soccer. It's just a miniature version of it. Looks like European soccer, and so I've not had the pleasure of being to Austria, but we've in our recruiting, I've been to Finland. And, I think very similar. And we obviously have alums that play in Germany and Austria and Finland and Sweden. And so it's very much an avenue that I think is a great model and, for our players to continue on after. And then, I think what people in Europe would maybe appreciate about Denver is, many of these communities have been supporting these hockey teams for 30, 40, 50, 60, even more years. And it really becomes a fabric of the community. And here at Denver, we've been playing hockey on our campus in this community. We just wrapped up our 72nd year. And so it's been going on for a really long time. There's a huge community support. I think alumni are celebrated in the European game, very much so. You really get these small town heroes who play in, towns for 10, 15 years. And I just think that's very similar to here, the way we honor our alumni. They don't have the opportunity to play for us for that long, but we welcome them back to campus often. And so I think it's a real family and community-based product that would be similar to the European and the Austrian model. And the one thing I would say is really unique about Denver to Austria is, the mountains are very close, and, it's only an hour, 40-minute drive from our campus to Vail Village, which is, when you're walking around there, I mean, it feels like you're in Austria. I've been to northern Italy and southern Switzerland, been to Czech Republic, and it's very much designed after, small European skiing towns like you have there in Austria. So I just think it's a great place to live, and you got to, at some point, you should have a meal on the podcast and have him speak about the differences and how he grew up and how Denver became an option to him. But I think there's a lot of similarities just with the community and in the surrounding landscapes.
It's been almost 20 years, but I've had the distinct pleasure of staying a couple of days in Denver myself, obviously watching a Broncos game back in the day, which you have to. But if someone really wants to get to a great and probably underappreciated American city, Denver would be the place. And it's not called the Mile High City for nothing. It is because it sits at a mile high on average, and the highest point, I think, more than 1,700 meters. So conditioning and obviously the thin air, a factor for everybody who comes here. A lot of topics, Coach, I want to tackle with you on this podcast, but take us back to the Frozen Four, and it took place, the NCAA tournament at the beginning of April, obviously April 9th, the day the University of Denver won its 9th championship. But you headed into Boston as the number 4 seed. So from a favorite standpoint, obviously the other 3 seeds considered being bigger favorites than you, number 4 seed. Did you feel any kind of pressure as all coming from such a prestigious program, going for a record-tying championship campaign win? Or was there no pressure at all on you and your guys?
Yeah, I think throughout the year, you always try and prepare in a similar way so that you feel, calm, you feel prepared, you feel confident going in. And, I think, we were, all four of us were 1 or 2 seeds within our region. So the way the NCAA tournament works, 16 teams, we were the 1 seed in Loveland. I believe Michigan was the 1 seed in their region. Mankato was the 1 seed in their region, and Minnesota was either the 1 or the 2 seed in their region. So it felt like 4 really, really good hockey teams that really weren't separated by very much. And so I can tell you, we didn't feel like an underdog. I think playing Michigan in that first game, I think the media enjoyed talking about Michigan and all of their first round picks and the Michigan draft last year with 4 of the top 5 picks and what have you. And I think they had 7 or 8 first rounders. But at no point did we feel like we were any less than them. And to be quite honest, I felt like that was our easiest game of the 4, having played Lowell, Duluth, Michigan, and then Mankato in the championship. Easiest to prepare for and easiest to play. I felt like was that Michigan game. And our guys, obviously played really well and executed at a high level. And it took overtime to get the job done. But no, we were really confident going in based on the year that we had and how close our group was and in the leadership group that we had. So obviously you go into those one and dones, anybody can win it. It was a great experience and great atmosphere in Boston. And we're so proud to have walked away with the championship banner and in our record-tying 9th title.
I vividly remember looking at the rosters right before the Frozen Four, looking at the matchups and just seeing this loaded Michigan team. Everybody was talking about, we were talking about Luke Hughes, we're talking about Owen Power, we're talking about Matty Beniers, we're talking about the first overall draft pick, the second overall draft pick, if I'm not mistaken, another top 5 draft pick. Incredible array and amount of talent. And you saying this was the easiest of the 4 games that you played on the road to the championship. Was it just because of that star-studded team where you knew you didn't have to additionally motivate your team because everybody wants to take down a quote-unquote giant like this?
Yeah, I think a couple things come to mind. I would say that obviously it maybe sounds where the game was not easy. It went to overtime. So all 4 games were very challenging. But of those 4, I felt like this one was the easiest to prepare for and to get up for. And so a couple of reasons would be, one, in our league, I think you're forced to defend really good hockey players night in and night out. So our league, the NCHC, the National Collegiate Hockey Conference, we had 5 teams of our 8 make the NCAA tournament. We've had like 50% of the Frozen Four field since, over the last 5 years. And just a number of things that have happened. So our league prepares us really well to have to defend. And against Michigan, you have to defend at a really high level. And so that's where I think we had a real good level of confidence going into that game. Because of that, we also had more time to prepare for that game. When you go into the Lowell game, our first game of the tournament, the week before we had played at the Frozen Face-Off, our league, our NCHC league playoff championship. And then right away you're into the national tournament, playing Lowell, a team that we don't know very well, was a tough challenge to prepare for them. Duluth, you play in game 2, who we know obviously very well, played them the week before. But then after Duluth game, you have that Saturday all the way until a bye week and the next Thursday. So we had a lot of time to dive into Michigan and prepare for them. And Mankato is a team that we hadn't seen all year and hadn't played in a number of years. So those would be some reasons, but no doubt, very talented, very good team, won a lot of hockey games this year. But I think our guys were as engaged defensively for that game because they knew you cannot take a shift off. Doesn't matter who you are, who you're on the ice against. We played a full 60 minutes defensively which I think obviously gave us the opportunity to win the hockey game. So full credit to them. They had a great year and great players, but I thought our guys did an excellent job being prepared and executing our game plan.
Just setting the record straight for Austrian and European listeners, we're talking about 4 of the top 5 picks of the 2021 NHL entry draft that were on Michigan. Star-studded probably doesn't even begin to describe the power and the quality of the program. So congrats on obviously taking them down in the NCAA semifinals, so to speak. As you were talking about the progression of the tournament and having, for example, 2 days to prepare for an opponent that you didn't see all year long, and then having almost 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent that you didn't see too often or the entire year. How do those two, I'd call them preparation phases, differ and or compare?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, if we just look at Michigan and Mankato, those 2 games, Michigan, again, we played that Saturday against Duluth. That would have been like, maybe March 27th or 28th. And then we don't play Michigan until April 7th. And then we have to play Mankato on April 9th. And so I think for us, we hadn't had a bye week since the second week of January, leading up all the way to that Duluth game and moving on to the Frozen Four. And so we were able to kind of take our time, dive into the video. You get the opportunity to show more video, to then rep things in practice that give your guys just the muscle memory of what we're going to do and what we're going to expect. And so you just have more time to practice, to work on what your game plan is, and to ultimately, I think, be more confident in preparing for the opponent. And then, you fast forward if obviously we beat Michigan, and then, the Mankato game, it's all of our focus as a coaching staff is in the Michigan game. And so, you beat Michigan that night, you're watching the Mankato Minnesota game. You've got some games of Mankato downloaded onto the computers, but we haven't watched we haven't dove into those yet. And so really all day Friday, it's tagging video, talking about it as a staff, but to the players, we didn't present anything on Mankato until actually Saturday morning, the day of the championship. We let Friday, the off day, be kind of just a rest and reset day. We got on the ice, skated, short little skate, just so that they, got a sweat, feeling good about themselves. And then Saturday, we got into our game plan against Mankato. And I will say the way the first 2 periods against Mankato went versus the 2 periods of how Michigan went, Mankato really was the better team for the first, 30 minutes of that hockey game. I didn't feel like until the halfway point did we start to push back very much the last 10 of the second. And then the third was we started to make some plays and put the puck in the net. But so the way we prepare and practice, I think the longer time definitely helps our group. And that was apparent between the 2 games. We were very good the first 2 periods against Michigan. We weren't so good the 2 periods against Mankato. So, but we found a way, and our goaltender was excellent and kept us in the hockey game, only down 1-0 going into the third against Mankato in the championship game.
You mentioned Emilio Romig. He was part of the University of Denver team that had already been to the Frozen Four. You were an assistant coach back in the day, so you already had that experience of being part of the Frozen Four. And what makes the tournament so great, like all the NCAA tournaments, it's basically a single game elimination tournament. You don't get a series. You don't get up to 4 games, to at the very least record 1 victory and extend the series. It's win a game or go home. What kind of deductions did you make from your first Frozen Four experience that might have helped you along the way this year?
Yeah, we've been fortunate to be in, 4 of the last 6 Frozen Fours, and that first one in Tampa was really special. That was back in 2016, and I think that that loss against North Dakota really drove our 17 team to winning the championship. And then after the 17 and 18 seasons, we had a lot of roster turnover. And 2019, we went back to the Frozen Four with a really young hockey team. Many of some of those players were on this year's team. And, I think what I would speak to is in 2019, I felt like we maybe built up the Frozen Four a little bit too much. And it did feel different than a regular hockey game. And I don't think that was something that we definitely took away from 19 to 22 in feedback from our players, just in the sense that we talk so much about, the event and in the environment. And then when we got there, it seemed like that's where a lot of our focus was back in 2019 in Buffalo. And fast forward to 22, I just thought we were a lot more even keeled, treating the Michigan game like another hockey game. And I think that really helped our team. Not that they weren't able to enjoy the experience of the police escorts and the sold out NHL building and all this stuff that comes with it. It's a great atmosphere. But I think our focus was more on the game than it was maybe what to expect from the external factors that we were doing in 2019.
We're talking about the game against Minnesota State, which is located in Mankato. They just eliminated Minnesota in the semi, so a huge regional rivalry happening in the Frozen Four. They just got over a big hump, just as you did in your semifinal. Now the two programs meet in the final, and hadn't scored a goal up until the third period. This might be the last period. This is the last period, regular period of the season. The guys haven't come to the locker room after the second. What was your message? What did you say to them to send them off to the third, where obviously a scoring explosion on your end happened?
Yeah, I think a lot was, and again, credit to them. Like, we had 8 shots through 2 periods. They defended us exceptionally well, made us very uncomfortable. And we were getting frustrated on the bench. We hadn't seen that level of frustration from our team in quite some time, coming back, from their shift onto the bench. And thankfully, our goaltender was able to keep it 1-0. That's kind of how it felt, on the bench, is like, if we could just keep this to 1, we do have a chance, because they're such a good defensive team. The goaltender won the Hobie Baker the night before. And, so that was important. And again, in the second, I thought we started to create some turnovers late in the period, the last 10, but we couldn't make a play. Our puck support was non-existent. And so in between the periods that, I know that we have, again, full trust in our leadership group. And I think it was a lot of the same message that we were sharing as coaches is, at the end of the day, nobody's played real well outside of our goaltender. We've got 20 minutes to go put it on the line and give it our best shot to leave it all out there. And we talked a couple things tactically with our puck support and just trying to be more connected on the ice. But ultimately, I think we needed to take a breath. And we had confidence that we could, many times throughout the year, we can score in bunches. And ultimately, I think we played our best period, in the last 20. And sometimes with this team, it was good enough to win a hockey game. And it certainly was that night.
As you were talking about Hobie Baker winning, Dryden McKay, the goaltender of Minnesota State, obviously the Hobie Baker Award, for all the people not following NCAA hockey too closely, goes to the top collegiate player of that season. So Dryden McKay, the goaltender, being considered the best player in college hockey. Your goalie going strong and helping you to keep the score at only 1-0 with Magnus Krona, a San Jose Sharks prospect that fans out west will be or might be hearing from in a couple of years down the road. And then this 5-goal avalanche, and I know you're in Denver, so no pun intended, happens. At what point do you go like, okay, this is starting to feel a lot like the 9th championship in the books?
Yeah, I mean, Probably after the second goal, like how quick it came after the first one. We didn't start the third great. They had a couple chances, and Magnus had to be good. And, we made a real nice entry play with a cross corner dump off of it, kind of to an area where Mike Benning could get the puck, and he threw it on goal, and Barrow was able to be there and put it in. And I think that goal gave our bench some life. And then obviously they take a penalty very quickly after we score as the power play expires. And it felt like at that moment we really had the momentum on our bench. And, for them, they hadn't been in that situation very often where, I think they were undefeated going into the third period with a lead. And now they had lost that lead in the first 5 minutes of the third. And so I think our guys really finally settled into themselves and saw that we could make a play, we could score on this guy. And then we get the 2-on-1 with Rizzo and Mazur, a few minutes later. And that to me was a huge goal, obviously, to make it 3-1. But then there was a save that Corona made shortly after that where it felt like if they had scored there, it was going to be a long 7-8 minutes. And he made the save. And I felt like at that moment they weren't going to be able to score 3 on us to win the hockey game. And then we get the 2 empty netters to ice it. So it was, really special third period, and a lot of different people contributing and sticking together in tough moments.
Third period that's going to live on in University of Denver Pioneers lore, obviously. Having eliminated Michigan, knowing that you could be going for an NCAA record-tying 9th championship, obviously tying Michigan, did that just put kind of an extra spice on this long-distance rivalry?
Yeah, and I think, we put a lot into that game, and, part of me thinks maybe that was a factor. On one, Mankato played great the first 2 periods, but 2, I think we still had a little bit of an emotional letdown potentially from the Michigan game, given the stakes that were there in the title balance. And obviously beating them and then being able to finish it off. You beat them, and you're at least keeping them at 9. And then you have the opportunity to close the gap and have a kind of a 2-banner swing. And it was great to be able to do it, and to have them be a part of it was awesome, especially for our alumni who used to play against Michigan. We've only played Michigan 3 times since 1981, and all 3 have been in the NCAA tournament. So we haven't been in the same conference since 81, have not been able to come to an agreement to play each other in non-conference regular season games since that time as well. And so to play them on a big stage, first time since 2002, was a very cool moment for the program.
Then we're obviously part of the National Collegiate Hockey Conference. Michigan, one of the premier Big Ten programs. Maybe at one point, those 2 programs will figure it out and see who prevails in the regular season. Another important aspect why I wanted to have you on is just the sheer fact that the NCAA has not only become popular over here in Europe, but because of the influx of talent with NCAA backgrounds. I mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation. So many players now in the NHL who don't use the minors or who don't have other backgrounds want to go to the NCAA and go on to the NHL, go on to European leagues. Why has the NCAA become such a pipeline for hockey talent all over the world?
It's a great question. I think at the end of the day, it's a really good model for young people to first and foremost get their education, and I think that's an attractive thing. And an education is something that nobody can ever take away from you. And so I think that message or that opportunity excites people. Obviously in the United States, but also in Canada, and in Europe, you're seeing more Finns, Swedes, Austrians, Slovaks, Czechs. I mean, they're all coming over to play in the North American Hockey League, to play in the United States Hockey League, with the dreams and the hopes to someday play U.S. college hockey. And so I think that's the first and foremost driving factor. And then from a hockey standpoint, they get the opportunity to train in the weight room twice a week. They're practicing 3-4 times a week. We went all the way this year, and I think we played 42 to 44 games. And so it's just a really good, healthy development model for kids and at their age, with where they're at in their maturation, where the CHL is obviously a lot more games. And then why is college players going to other places? One, I think more Europeans are coming here, so they want to go back home and play in their home countries. And two, I think maybe North American hockey sometimes isn't all it's cracked up to be, with the amount of games that you play in the American Hockey League or the East Coast League. It is a real grind on the body. And so what you'll see is some players will do it for 2 to 5 years. And then they say, you know what, I want to go to Europe and explore the world and, play 55 to 65 games and play in these small raucous communities and be a part of that. So I think it's a lot too. I mean, a lot of our alumni have gone and played, like I said, in Germany, in Sweden, in Finland, in Austria. And now when they come back in the summer, they're talking about their experiences, and it piques the interest of the next wave of guys. They're like, oh, like that's something I'd want to do. And so they get paid well. I mean, that's the other factor, is you can make more money over there in a lot of cases. And it's a life experience opportunity that many of them are taking advantage of. And we encourage it, quite often to our guys, like, have a little bit more life balance and see the world a little bit and get to enjoy that experience.
As you were already talking about the double duties that NCAA players have to face, they're officially still considered being student athletes. So obviously they're studying at university, but they also play in competitive sports. How do you, as a head coach, try to find the right balance and encouraging your players in finding the right balance needed for being good at what they're studying and being good on the ice?
Yeah, it is a hard balance. So much comes into time management, and so we try and provide resources to them, and it's not rocket science. I mean, we offer them journals, planners. We have them fill out weekly schedules at the start of each quarter, just to put pen to paper, to kind of visualize their thoughts and their plan of what they want their weeks to look like. And then we stay on top of them. We constantly remind them of, at Denver, we have 3 trimesters that are each 10 weeks long. So every day on our practice plan, it'll say we're in week 2, or we're in week 3, or we're in week 5, and midterms are happening. So we just try and make sure that, we as the leaders are making it a priority and talking about it, and they then see the value and the benefit in it. And a lot of it comes to in the recruiting process, where we're getting young men and families who value the education. They understand what they're signing up for, and they want that. They want a really good academic experience, a good athletic experience, hand in hand. And so that's a lot of what we talk about in the recruiting, so that when they get here, they're not like, all surprised that what's this school stuff? We never talked about this. And so that's, I think, critical, is just upfront communication with the kid and the family.
Now, not to get down to the nitty-gritty, because there are a lot of different ways looking at it, and obviously a lot of different ways how this one can turn out, but a career at an NCAA university could take up to 4 years. You might just get them for 1 if they decide to move on in their professional lives. You might have them for 2. You might have them for 3. So there's a lot of uncertainty how long you are going to get a player to develop. What does it do in terms of team building when you don't know how long one's going to be committed to the University of Denver, how often you have to change lineups and teams in maybe less than a year?
Yeah, I mean, like it's one of the unique challenges that we have, and it's becoming more challenging in the landscape as the NCAA changes. Players can depart your program at any point now after a season and transfer to go play at another program. So they essentially go into a portal, which some have called, the free agency of hockey. And, they can go somewhere else. We can also see who's in there, and we can recruit players out of there who have current college experience. And so there's just a lot more changing of or fluidity to the roster. Again, we're losing 9 players off of last year's team, 4 to graduation, 3 to early signing, and then 2 that are transferring. And so it's a constant challenge of moving timelines and moving targets. So one thing with our, because you asked to be our drafted players, guys who maybe are going to sign, we try and start to have conversations with them in their second year as to, around the Christmas time as to when they think their timeline is, maybe what we think. We can include the NHL team, the player advisor, the family, just to try and get everybody on the same page, because so much of being successful at this level, at a program level, is being able to plan and manage the roster to a really high level. And you can only do that if you know a general idea of when people are coming and going. And so that's a little bit of an insight into what we talk about and what we try and do. And, you don't want to get caught with a surprise. And so that's what the early communication tries to mitigate.
9 players that you're going to lose. That's basically a third of a hockey program. And it's not only the players going out, but it's also about the players coming in and the recruiting that has to be done. And that's something very uniquely North American, very unique to that system. How does recruiting work? And now I'd imagine you coming from a successful program that has won so many championships, that's been a regular to the tournament and the Frozen Four. I'd imagine the sales pitch is a little easier, but how do you approach recruiting? How many face-to-face meetings you do indeed get with potential prospects that you want to get on the program?
Yeah, we, the rules stipulate a lot of what we can and cannot do. We can start talking to players really when they are in their grade 10 year. And then we can verbally offer them when they get into their grade 11 year.
So we're talking about 17-year-olds.
Yep. 16, 17-year-olds is kind of when the relationship can begin. You can offer them when they're 17. And so it's nice. We have, an 8-month window where we can't offer them a scholarship, and they can't accept a scholarship or tell us they want to come to Denver or what have you. And so it allows, like you said, a time for almost an interview period where we get to talk to, we might only want to offer 2 or 3 players, but we're going to talk to 10 to 12 players that we really like. And then from there, we're going to narrow it down to the 2 or 3, or maybe even only 1 that we feel comfortable offering come the time they all turn juniors. And conversely, for the player, they can talk to 5, 6, 7, however many schools they want. They're able to communicate with, and then they can figure out, well, is Denver somewhere where I could really see myself? And so it's a really nice model, I think, in where the schools have a lot of autonomy in what they want to do, and so do the players. And it's a really upfront and open process that I think allows the kids then to commit to the school that the school, really wants that player. And so, to answer your question, I mean, we'll have numerous conversations before we end up offering a scholarship, and we want to make sure that we're getting the right people who share similar values to us. And, the end of the day, there's some really good players that we say no to. And there's some really good players that say no to us. And because there's a lot of really good hockey players out there, and we can only have so many. And, we carry 26 on our roster, and you divide that over 4 years, we're bringing in, anywhere from 5 to 9 every year. So it's a really selective group on both sides of the coin, given that there's 60 plus hockey programs that kids could choose from.
It's obviously not only about the NCAA, but also about the minors and European leagues. So a lot of big time programs fight for a lot of good players. But let's say there's a player you really like that you really want to have on your program. Talks have been good, but is there like a key characteristic, a key component to his game that he needs to bring to the table to qualify for the University of Denver, quote unquote?
Yeah, I think, for us, we look for, smart hockey players and competitive hockey players, no different than a lot of people that can look different, though, to different people. And I think, our staff with, our recruiting efforts are led by one of my assistants in Tavis McMillan, and in Dallas Ferguson, our other assistant, helps him in that. And obviously I try and help in and not screw it up where I can. And I think that we have a really good sense of what works at our program, and our definition of competitive might be different than somebody else's. And, so those are two things that we look for, certainly first and foremost, over even physical attributes, whether it be size or weight or what have you. And, I think the other thing is, like, if they do something really, really special or unique, it's hard to find one-shot goal scorers. And so if you can find a guy who can put the puck in the net, but maybe he's got some deficiencies in other parts of his game, then you're willing to take that on and to work with that player, as long as they're willing to understand that we're going to coach them to make them a more complete player. So everyone brings something different. You can't have 26 guys that all do the same thing. I think that's the exciting part about our level, is we get to really be the general managers. We get to be the scouting department. We get to be the coaches. We get to be the development coaches. And it's a great model where we're forced to really communicate at a high level with the student athletes from the age of, maybe 16 until they graduate with us at the age of 22 or 23.
Now, at only 32 years of age, you've already got 2 championship wins in the NCAA under your belt. You're one of the young aspiring coaches that raises a lot of eyebrows, obviously, but your personal story can't be told without the unfortunate events of the NHL Scouting Combine in 2008. We just concluded the most recent Scouting Combine in Buffalo. Back in your day in 2008, you were diagnosed, and I hopefully pronounce it correctly, with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, basically an enlargement of the heart muscle that could cause sudden death in pro athletes, which led to you having to end your pro career. You still were drafted by Tampa Bay Lightning, but unfortunately you had to call it quits. How long did it take you to accept the fact that pro sports weren't meant to be for you as an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. I had to accept it quite quickly, and that was, again, some days were harder than others. Some days were more manageable than others, but at the end of the day, what I have, the expected life expectancy, I should say, of someone who has what I have is normal, unless you don't know that you have it, because you can manage and monitor your lifestyle to a point where you can still live in a healthy way and manage the condition where you can have a normal full-on life expectancy. Now, maybe the stress levels I feel behind the bench aren't the best for what I have, but I think it's probably better than being on the ice and jacking my heart rate up as the players do. So anyways, I think that's first and foremost really important. And the people that you see who tragically, it happens in soccer, it seems a lot. It does happen in hockey. Around the time of my diagnosis, Mickey Renaud passed away. He's the captain of the Windsor Spitfires, a second-round pick. And then shortly after I was diagnosed, Alexei Cherepanov, first-rounder to New York, Russian, passed away during a game, both from the same condition that I have. So I had those things happen around my diagnosis, which really sadly helped me put things into perspective, that things could be a lot worse. And that's how I always kind of approached it, was the disease and the condition had taken so much from me in my playing career that I didn't want to let it take any more from me. And I wanted to try and be grateful and have a sense of gratitude toward what I did still have. And life is ultimately a team sport. And I had a great support group around me with my family, friends, the University of Denver honoring my scholarship, the Tampa Bay Lightning drafting me still with an honorary pick in the 7th round. There was a lot of really great things that people did for me in order to help me get through that challenging time. And I'm forever indebted to all of those people for what they did. And that's a little bit of my passion for the program and the university. Is I feel it to be a moral obligation to try and do my best and lead this program to develop young men and to win championships.
Two things in there. Obviously, the first one is what you just said, might be helping others along the way. I know every hockey playing kid kind of dreams about playing in the National Hockey League and hoisting the Stanley Cup at one point. If that bubble bursts, these words you just uttered might be inspirational along the way. Second one is go check your heart out. Doesn't matter the age. We just had a highly touted Austrian prospect with heart problems, obviously caused from COVID-19 with Marco Rossi. So it never hurts to get a routine, a check on the thing that drives your body. But speaking of drive and as I labeled it, the dream of playing professionally in the NHL and sometimes probably being a part of Stanley Cup winning team, disappeared in that moment. But was it a gimme back then for you to start a career as a coach, or did that develop over time?
No, that developed over time, and I give the staff here at Denver a lot of credit. My freshman year, I would listen in on some meetings, coaching meetings, video. I was at the rink every day. I was at practice every day, but they started to peel back the layers and let me in a little bit as to what was happening, to see if that was an avenue that I would want to go down. And truthfully, it probably wasn't until my junior year, my third year at DU, where again, throughout my freshman year, my first year, I started to do more and more. My sophomore year, I started to do more and more. My junior year, I started to do more. I never, again, really thought about it in a way that this would be a career path. For me, it was just I wanted to be a part of the team and the program and help everybody win, and that was driving me. And then one of the assistant coaches at the time, who's now an assistant coach with the Tampa Bay Lightning, in his third year with them, Derek Lalonde, a good friend of mine, he actually hired me in Green Bay in the USHL for my first full-time paid position after graduating from DU. But the George Wazdecki was running the guys through a conditioning skate, and Derek and I were hanging out on the net, kind of moving the net up the ice so the guys had fresher ice to do their turns on. And he said to me, he goes, "You're gonna do this full time, right, when you graduate?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Coaching." I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, "Well, you're really good at it, and I think it's something you should really consider." So really up until that point, I hadn't considered it. And it's another lesson that as a mentor, just words matter. And, just a little bump to somebody really opened my mind to maybe the possibility of doing it for a career. And then he obviously put his money where his mouth is. He got the Green Bay job in the USHL my senior year, had an opening after his first year, and called me on the spot and just said, I want you to come and work with me in Green Bay. No interview, no nothing. Just said, you need to come work with me. And I accepted that and was there for a year and a half before getting the opportunity to come back to Denver with Jim Montgomery as a full-time assistant. And Derek is now obviously gone on. He head coach in Toledo, the East Coast Hockey League, Iowa Wild in the American League, and now he's an assistant coach with Tampa Bay, and will soon hopefully be a head coach in the National Hockey League as his name is up and around some of these jobs that are open right now.
Interesting that you're speaking about the jobs that have opened up, and Bruce Cassidy just the other day was let go by the Boston Bruins. So there's another head coach opening, and I talked to it a lot about a former NHL player who's a pundit on our shows who won a championship in Austria with Greg Holst. And each and every time we're talking about job openings in the National Hockey League, it seems like it's the same old 5 to 10 names that are circulating. It's like the old boys club of Bruce Boudreau, Claude Julien, like each and every time the same names get mentioned. You as a 32-year-old aspiring head coach that I'm sure caught a lot of organizations' attention just by the sheer fact that you brought a championship to the University of Denver. How do you follow these hiring cycles in the National Hockey League, and how much young blood or influx of young blood would be needed in some of these head coaching positions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we'll ultimately see what happens. Where the game goes.
Not to take anything away from the grades of the game in coaching, but sometimes, it seems to me a fresh outside perspective would be more helpful than someone who's run programs for 30 years in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, and I think general managers are getting more, are maybe seeing it that way as well. On occasion, you see Marty St. Louis, just got the job in Montreal. And, I think there's David Quinn, Jim Montgomery get hired out of college hockey, be it 3-4 years ago. But I think, the league to look to is the NFL. And in the Super Bowl championship game, you had the two youngest head coaches in the National Football League were the two coaches in the Super Bowl. And again, I'm careful and wary to this because people ask me about my age a lot, and for some reason think maybe I connect better than older people or what have you. And I just think ultimately people who are good at what they do are good at what they do. And to be a good coach, you have to be able to connect with people and relay your message and trust people and build relationships. And I think you can be 32 and do that. I think you can be 52 and do that. I think you can be 72 and do that. And so that's where, I do think the trend, though, is getting more open-minded to maybe younger or first-time head coaches or, and you're seeing young American Hockey League head coaches and Spencer Carberry and David Warsofsky, or Ryan Warsofsky, I should say, sorry. And you're seeing their names, out there. And I think all in all, and again, a good friend of mine and Derek Lalonde, who, I think you're seeing names starting. Jim Montgomery's name's getting back out there. I think it's as competitive as ever to secure an NHL head coaching job, as it's ever been.
And obviously there are only 32 of those positions, and it makes sense to rate the two-time Stanley Cup winning championship team or the Tampa Bay Lightning, just as Sean McVay's staff or the Los Angeles Rams has been rated this offseason as well. But the coaching hires, they're a long way from being completed and finished. The near future obviously has the Stanley Cup Finals in store, and Denver could indeed see 2 hockey championships. The Avalanche advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals yesterday against the Edmonton Oilers. We're recording this conversation on a Tuesday. It's appearing tomorrow on Wednesday. According to our good friends over at Unibet, the Avalanche are the huge favorite to win the cup with odds of 1 to 1.45. After that, it's the Rangers with 1 to 5.25 and the Lightning with 1 to 5.5 odds. Are the Avalanche, to you, the huge favorite as well, or is a cup final always the great reset button in hockey?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I think it's obviously they're very dynamic, and but there's 2 really good teams on the other side, and arguably the 2 best goaltenders in the world on the other side, going at it. You know, it's always interesting to see what rest does. You know, Colorado is done. And this other series is just starting game 4 this evening at the time of us talking. So, you know, Tampa came off sweeping and New York came off a 7-game series. And, you know, Tampa goes and loses the first 2 games against New York. So just, I don't know, it's really hard to predict. I think, obviously the rest time will hopefully be good for Colorado, and trying to get healthy with Kemper and maybe Kadri coming back. But the depth of their team seems to be very different. You could even see in their approach last night, having swept the Oilers, it just looked real businesslike. And, you know, with their leadership group, and everyone heard McKinnon's comments at the end of last season, having been bounced in the second round again by Vegas. And they seem to be, you know, very focused and determined on what is to come. But that being said, that again, there's 2 real good teams on the other side, and who knows what's going to happen in the Lightning Rangers series. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping to be able to go to one of the games and enjoy it as a fan. And if my buddy Derek is if they move on with Tampa, and we'll have Logan O'Connor with the Avalanche, and then it's a win-win for me and our program.
Obviously, we're at the back end of the conversation. We're approaching the hour marker of this conversation, and so thankful that you're still taking time to talk a little hockey. Because another interesting thing I got from our friends at Unibet is the odds for the Conn Smythe Trophy. Obviously, the playoff MVP, Cale Makar, at this point now the favorite with 1 to 3 odds, and Nathan MacKinnon not too far behind at 1 to 3.15 odds. Are those the 2 front runners for you as well, or should there be someone else in the mix?
Yeah, I think on Colorado, for sure, those would be the 2. And then obviously, pending what comes out of, you know, the other series, you know, Kucherov and Vasilevsky, you know, probably for Tampa. New York, it's hard to argue. You know, Kreider's had such a great playoff, and obviously Shesterkin has been exceptional since kind of his first, you know, real playoff experience against Pittsburgh in the first round. So, you know, there's definitely players that, and to win this time of year, and it was no different for us, your best players need to be your best players. If McKinnon and Makar weren't in the conversation, well, the Avalanche probably wouldn't be in the conversation of still being playing. So, yeah, a lot of great players that are stepping up, and it's great for young people and young players to watch how these players are elevating themselves at the most fun and most high pressure time of the year.
And we're going to see how the cup final turns out. Obviously, something that we all know is that Unibet has the special offer for all new customers. It's a 400% welcome bonus. Just use the promo code hockey minus bonus while putting 10 euros into your new account for the first time and receive 40 euros for free. That's right, for free. As usual, more details in the show notes of this podcast. And we all know it's Unibet by players for players. You mentioned, Coach, going to one of the games at the Stanley Cup Finals. Obviously, the first 2 are going to happen in Colorado, in Denver. As a championship-winning head coach of the city of Denver, one might imagine you'd get the red carpet treatment, but that hasn't been set in stone yet.
No.
Shall we try to put in a word with Joe Sakic?
Yeah, no. I certainly have not received an invite to a game yet, nor do I expect one. So it'll just be great for the city, I think. Back to 01, it there's a lot of really good hockey players that come out of Denver and in the state of Colorado from that birth year, especially, Troy Terry really comes to mind, who played for us, was on our title team in 17. So hockey is really strong here. And at the end of the day, it's only going to help our program in that, we won in 17 and 22. And if the Avalanche can get it done in 22, there's going to be a lot of really good players from, that were born 2010 on that really grew up and said, well, that's how I got into hockey. And I became a Denver fan. I became an Avalanche fan, and I want to go to Denver, and then I want to play for the Avalanche and try and do the same thing. So it's all really good stuff. And we're thrilled for the Avs and Logan O'Connor, who is a member of our 17 team as well. And, wishing them all the best as they prepare for whoever wins this Tampa Bay, New York series.
Couldn't have put it better to round out this conversation. Obviously, Denver could indeed become title town in hockey in North America, with the NCAA championship already there and a Stanley Cup. Getting there, we'll know more in a couple of weeks, but at this point in time, I'm just thankful that you took such extensive time talking about championship campaign, about the NCAA, and looking forward to hearing from you again at some point in the future here on Unibet Hockey O'Clock.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy to come on, and hopefully we're doing this again next year.
Exzellente Unterhaltung mit dem schönsten Sport der Welt.
Unibet Hockey O'Clock.